what to change and what's so bad and what we should have learned all these years and have known about what we're eating and what we're doing to ourselves, and how really, innovation and all these, new ways of making products and making food and shelf life and lowering the cost of food, it's really hurting us as a society and our health, and all the innovation around, pills and drugs and just everything to help take care of symptoms that we could otherwise prevent or handle in more natural ways. So I'm really, it kills me every time I listen to a lecture and learn some very basic things that frankly we should have been learning all this time, or at least have access to it a little more easily than listening to these videos. So anyway, apologize for that, but that's why I'm doing it. If you listen to my first video, that's why I want to start getting these messages out there. And keep in mind that what I'm trying to share with you now are just some very basic protocols, as I'm calling them, things that I'm hoping all of you can bring into a regular daily habit to help maybe fix some potential issues that you have and how you feel and how your body functions, or to prevent things going forward, prevent potential issues. So these are just very simple things that anybody can do. Hopefully you do it every day, and they're things you should not stop doing. If you have, more health concerns and especially as you're tracking, and hopefully you're still tracking. I know it's hard, but to get into that habit. But if you can continue to track, just what you're eating, how you're feeling, and keeping that front and center, that how you feel is really important, and you should pay attention to it, and you shouldn't just write it off as anything off as old age, or because I have XYZ, or because my mom had this or my dad had this, that it's just supposed to happen to me. You shouldn't just assume that. So if you do have some other health concerns that you want to do something about, maybe reach out to me, let me know, and I can point you in a direction of a functional nutrition counselor, or you can look one up. They're all over the place, but that's what I'm working toward doing. I have a full-time job now, so I'm just trying to share what I know now, but there are ways then that people can work with you individually and understand your own history and your own issues and what's going on in your body, because the whole point of this, again, is not every answer is going to be the same for everyone, even with similar symptoms, right? Everybody is different. Everybody's body makeup is different. We function differently, and we can't just assume that because person A has these symptoms and this type of change worked for them, that it will automatically work for person B who has similar symptoms. So that's what we want to stay away from. But again, hopefully some of these things are helping you, and we're going to continue. So today, sorry for that spiel, but I was really bothered yesterday, and you'll hear more about why in probably a couple weeks when I blast some information about sugar. So just be ready for that. So just to recap where we've been, talked about setting goals. I'm not going to come back to the goals just yet, but hopefully you're continuing to refine your goals and think about them in terms of your health and not necessarily your weight. I think so often we're stuck with a goal of losing weight, or maybe it's gaining weight, or whatever it might be in your circumstance. And I really hope that you can stay away from that. I think that puts a certain number target in front of you, and then you're doing all the right things to just maybe get to that weight instead of thinking about healthy things that will just let that weight change happen naturally. So therefore, maybe your goals should be different, more around the health, and why would you want to lose weight? What is that going to get you? What are you trying to actually achieve by getting to a certain weight? That really should be the focus of your goal, so that you don't get sidetracked or go about it the wrong way. So anyway, we talked about the goals. We talked about tracking your food, how you feel, how you're pooping, because it's such a huge indicator of potential, health problems, and especially from the digestive standpoint, which is where everything starts. And hopefully on that tracker, you're also tracking your water intake and your sleep. So just some things to pay attention to. Then we started to talk about digestion, and we had some ideas to help prime that digestive process by taking some apple cider vinegar, chewing your food, things like that we talked about last week. So we only got down to the stomach, where the chemical digestion, where most of that occurs. And today I wanted to talk about your intestines a bit. So your small intestine and your large intestine, otherwise known as the colon. So large intestine, colon, same thing. And talk a little bit about what happens there and what bad things could happen there, and just things to be aware of. So in your small intestine, you have these, basically you have a lining around your small intestine, as you do through your entire digestive system, by the way. Remember, so I think we talked about, like, if you think about your digestive system starting in your mouth and going all the way through your rectum, it's one big hole, right? It's just like a donut. If you think about a donut, there's a hole in the middle. That's our digestive system if you think about the whole way through. And throughout, we have lining throughout that whole structure. That is very important lining to make sure that things that are not supposed to get into your bloodstream don't get into your bloodstream. And then that lining is also smart enough to know that the things that should get into your bloodstream get absorbed in the right way. Some things get absorbed in your stomach, some things don't get absorbed until your small intestine, and that's actually where most of your absorption of all the nutrients take place, and they're sent into your bloodstream to then be taken to the liver to be further, filtered. But that small intestine is where most of the absorption takes place. And you can think of the wall, the lining of that small intestine, and really when we talk about the intestines generally, we're talking about the gut. You think about the wall, that lining is actually filled, there's like two key things. The lining itself is like a carpet that's all folded up. So it looks like this. I was going to draw it, but it doesn't do any good. You don't really need to memorize this stuff, but it might be helpful to understand it. So then in those folds, if you think about carpet, think about a shag carpet. There's all these little villi, they're called, sticking out of that carpet lining. And that lines your entire small intestine, right, which is very long. And there's 3 different parts of the small intestine. Again, you don't need to know that. But each of those villi are actually responsible for absorbing very specific nutrients out of the food that has already been broken down and is now going to be absorbed because it's been broken down in the particles that can, be put into the bloodstream. And the only thing that gets put in the bloodstream are amino acids from your proteins, glucose from your carbohydrate breakdown, and the fat lipids from the fats. So there's only 3 things that can get pulled out of there, along with, the vitamins and minerals and whatnot. So those villi are extremely important, okay? And within the villi and all along each little one of those villi, there's what is good bacteria. Basically, if you've heard of the microbiome, there's all kinds of talk these days about the microbiome and basically that it's another organ. I think I read that it weighs like 7 pounds, but it's basically a ton of good bacteria sitting in your intestines that are there to protect your insides from all the bad things that could be going on in your small intestine. If you think about all the food you eat, and everything that's broken down, there's a lot of toxins and crap and chemicals and other things in there that you do not want to get into your bloodstream. And right, that's what ends up becoming waste. So these villi are pulling out the good things and they're leaving the bad things, and that's what ends up going through your colon and leaving your system, right? That's basically how it works. So what can happen is these villi get damaged. And that might be due to an allergy that you have, or a food sensitivity, or other, maybe you had food poisoning, or other types of inflammation can occur in your gut. And what happens is the villi just they atrophy. So they don't do their job. They fall over, or they're not waving around. They're not taking the nutrients in. And basically more and more, then mucus can be a result of that, right? Think about a cut on your arm, right? You get a cut on your arm, something's wrong, it's inflamed. You usually take care of it. You cover it up, or you put some kind of ointment on it to help it heal. You don't keep throwing, say salt or other things at it. You don't keep itching it. You don't keep doing things to it. because it will get aggravated and it will continue to hurt and it could get infected. Well, think about that same type of thing happening in your gut. The problem is you don't see it. You take care of all these things that you can see externally, but we don't always know that there's something going on in the skin, really. All the lining in your intestines are considered a skin, right? So there's something going on in there. It's inflamed. And you might just think it's like, stomach pains, maybe gas pains, or maybe you don't even feel it at all and it just grows and grows. And all of a sudden you have some level of inflammation somewhere in your body and you have no idea it's because you have actual inflammation going on in your gut. So this all the mucus and everything that starts to build up because of that inflammation can just continue to exacerbate and make things worse. And what happens is then you get overloaded with bad bacteria in your gut, and some of that good bacteria might break down. And the good bacteria is what is kind of fighting and keeping all the bad things out of your system. So it's guarding that skin. And then when you hear about the term leaky gut, it basically means the good bacteria is overwhelmed and it can't keep out the bad foreigners, and it's seeping through your gut lining. And then that causes all kinds of havoc on your immune system, because your immune system comes and attacks a foreigner, it doesn't recognize it, and then it's just on the go, handling something that you put into your own body, right? So it's not spending the time focused on fighting things like viruses and cancers and other types of inflammation that might be going on in your body through because of external factors or whatnot, anything. So the symptoms that you can get out of, having either just inflammation in your gut and some atrophy and then potentially leaky gut can be a whole host of things. And again, you could end up just getting headaches or being fatigued or having foggy brain fog, as they call it, where you just can't think straight. Rashes, other allergies, eczema, there's all kinds of symptoms that could come. And then what happens when you get those symptoms, right? You take medicine and you just try to quell the symptom. You go to a dermatologist if you have eczema, and maybe they give you a steroid to put on your skin. Or any other thing other than thinking about what might be happening in your gut. And so often a lot of this comes down to you actually just have issues and permeability in your gut, and guess what? It can be fixed. Just like a cut on your arm, you could actually fix that permeability, but the problem is first you have to stop attacking it, right? You have to remove what you're doing to further inflame the area that's hurt. And the only way to do that in your gut is to remove some of the inflammatory foods that you might be eating. And those are things like gluten, dairy, sugar. Those are the top 3 inflammatory foods that you can be taking and really hurting yourself. Now, if you're not having any symptoms and your body's functioning properly and you're not totally overwhelming your body with sugar and gluten and dairy, then your system's working fine. That's perfectly fine. Keep eating it, right? If you don't have a sensitivity to it, by all means. We'll talk about the sugar part at another time, but your body is really, really good at taking care of, the bad things that you put in your body. That's why it works the way it does. So, if you're not having any of those symptoms, you don't necessarily have to worry about healing your gut and then, getting all that microbiome working properly. So taking a step back, also that microbiome, the lining of your gut and all the bacteria that sits there, it actually replenishes itself every 3 to 5 days. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that your villi gets fixed, right? If there's a problem, there's probably, there's some other things you may need to do with that, and that's a different issue, right? So that's when you would want to work with someone and determine if that's the case. It might mean that you have an actual allergy to, gluten, like a celiac disease and whatnot. So that could be another problem and something that you actually have to stop eating certain foods. But otherwise, your microbiome, it does clean itself out every 3 to 5 days and regrows. So imagine that much bacteria regrows in your body on its own, which is amazing. And then if you hear about people taking probiotics and prebiotics, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put those good bacteria into their gut because maybe they know that they don't have a good microbiome, they don't have enough good bacteria or certain bacteria they might need, and that might be through having tests and going to doctors and whatnot. But there are tons of different types of probiotics. I'm not suggesting anybody start taking it. I'll talk in a little bit about ways that you can just kind of naturally add good bacteria to your gut, and but I'm not going to suggest you need a probiotic right now. So anyway, your gut's very important, and lots of things can happen in your gut, and you're not going to know that it's there. And so often it could be years that something's building from a problem, and you're getting, when I talked about the car and the dashboard of your car, where you're like getting little signals here and there that maybe something's going wrong, maybe you should check a tire, things like that. Your body might be telling you that through simple headaches that you have regularly, you get fatigued, maybe you have a rash that keeps coming back, or other skin issues. Your skin is one way that we release toxins, right? It's the biggest organ. So you release toxins through your skin, and that, maybe acne, and you didn't normally have it, and that's popping up. All of that could easily lead back to something going on in your gut, and that toxicity is trying to get out of your system. But the only way to fix it is to heal it, stop inflaming it, number one, and then heal it. And again, if you have those kind of bad issues, you'll want to work with someone individually and really determine, what's going on. I just wanted you to have this kind of education because a leaky gut, if you actually have it, can lead to some really major problems. All the autoimmune disorders typically come back to a leaky gut, where your immune system is basically attacking itself, attacking its own tissues in different ways, and it can just cause all kinds of problems. So just, again, be aware. Your body might be trying to tell you something, and some of the tips that I'm giving you are ways that you can help to prevent that. And we will get to food here over the next couple weeks and talk about gluten and dairy and sugar, and maybe some ideas around going through an elimination diet and allowing your gut to heal. A little bit of detox or reset might always be a good idea to do once a year, just to kind of get your body back in order again. No different than maybe taking your car in for an oil change. So that might be something that you'll want to do, and we'll talk about that in a few weeks. But wanted to make sure you understood the idea of the microbiome and bacteria. So that being said, I would like to recap where we are and some of these tips and these protocols. And if you can believe it, I'm sticking with the alphabet idea. And I don't know how I got all these words to fit with the letters in order, but I did. So let's go back to day one. The first three things that we talked about are ABCs. We're starting with A, drink your apple cider vinegar, right? Priming your system every morning, apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon, helping getting those enzymes and that acid going in your stomach so that it's ready to do its job. Same thing, also getting it warmed up. Bless your food. Take some time, get that saliva going. Think about a dog drooling, right? When he thinks about his food, he starts to drool. That's what you kind of want to give yourself time, smell it, bless it. Give yourself time to build up that saliva, because you actually start breaking down the food with that saliva and through chewing, right? So C, chewing. Chew your food, break it up as much as possible to save that energy from your stomach having to do all the work and potentially not be able to get it digested enough, but help it out, right? So that was ABC. And then if you recall, we talked about the macronutrients and trying to balance out your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Try to get a little bit of everything in each meal. And so I gave that the name for D, diversity. Actually, diversify. So diversify your meals through carbs, fat, and protein. I notice I put or, think of fat, fiber, and protein. So fat's fat, obviously good fat. Fiber, if we think about eating a fiber instead of just a carb, or a carb that has good fiber in it, you're typically picking one of the carbohydrates that are better for you. And you need fiber. Your digestive system needs it. It's like a sweeper in your small intestine and colon, right? It really helps things move. So think about that. Fat, fiber, and protein at every meal, okay? And if you need ideas on foods that are high in fiber, you can Google it. It's pretty easy. So we also talked about eating the rainbow. So E is for eat the rainbow. Colorful foods. Think about even the reds and the blues, not just the greens. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, all the berries. And the greens, of course, are very good. Beets are red, they're good. So good for you. So think about colorful meals. And that might take a little time to learn what you currently do and what you need to add. So that wraps up everything we talked about through last week. So I just want to do a bit of a recap, and I asked you to go back and kind of track where are you in your balance of carbs, protein, and fats, and are you heavily weighted towards carbs, for example, which typically in a standard American diet you are, and we're heavily weighted toward no color. So my ask was to go back and evaluate it, assess it for yourself, and then, see if you can make some better food choices going into this past week. So hopefully you're doing some of that. And again, over the next couple of weeks, I will talk more about food. I plan to show you some recipes and how I put things together for some of my go-to breakfasts and lunch and dinner that are colorful and have all those three mixed in together, and they're really easy to make. And we'll also talk about some resources about where you can easily find, even online, some of these different ingredients and even recipes. It's so much easier to get healthy recipes these days. There's so many more ingredients that you can use. So there's tons out there, and sometimes it's overwhelming. There's too much. So I can at least give you a couple of the go-tos that I use. So moving on to F. So this is new for this week. Something that I want you to try to add to your diet are fermented foods. So F, fermented foods. So we talked about that, about the microbiome and your good bacteria. You hear a lot about fermented foods these days. People are fermenting their own foods. Sauerkraut is an example of fermented cabbage, right? It's really good for you. It has some of that good bacteria in it. You could eat that. If you hear about yogurt and the Activia, so you've heard a lot of that before. It was a new product years ago. It's meant to give you probiotics in your gut. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, only because it's processed. I'm pretty sure they take the fat out of it so that you don't think you're eating a fatty product. But if you want yogurt, definitely get whole fat, full fat, organic yogurt. And you actually smell it, and it smells like vinegary, and it actually has like that tang to it that maybe some people don't like, but I happen to really like that tang. So I like the whole organic full fat yogurt. It's just plain, right? There's no flavor added, no nothing. If you get the whole thing, it's really good. Add some fruit to it, some berries and whatnot, right? But there's kefir, there's other types of fermented foods. Look it up, think about what you might be able to add. And if you like sauerkraut, I frankly just have a couple tablespoons of sauerkraut almost every day. Sometimes I forget, but with my lunch, I literally just get the jar out, and because nobody else eats it in my house, so I take it and have a couple tablespoons of sauerkraut with whatever meal, whether it's lunch or dinner. Sometimes breakfast if it's eggs, because I think it tastes good with eggs. I don't know. So that's an idea. Fermented foods, naturally adding some of those probiotics or the, good bacteria back into your gut without taking a pill. Okay. Now I'm going to talk through a couple more. So I actually have a couple ideas, and these just came up yesterday. So it's amazing the more I learn, and I'm getting newsletters from this course that I'm taking now and reading up on some recipes. and I found two things yesterday I thought were very interesting and timely, and I needed a G. But my G is goji berries. I don't know if you've heard of goji berries. I hadn't until I started making a granola that called for them. And they're at this store where I get groceries in the bulk section. A lot of people put them in their granola, but they're like little dried berries. And apparently they are an amazing superfood, have a ton of protein, are really good for your gut. Like there's so many great things about goji berries that it could be a really good snack. And if you like them, just eating them plain could be something for you to carry around with you and use as a snack. They're very good for you. So maybe something to try, goji berries. I mean, how could a dried berry not be good, right? So try it out. And what I'll do is I'll post a link to the article that I read with a recipe that included goji berries in the comments when I post this. So you can read about it as well. So I will do that. And the other thing that I actually don't have here, that kind of goes along with the fermented foods idea, is that pectin, which can be found in apples, is also another very good source to add good bacteria back to your gut. And one challenge that was in this article was it suggested that if you have 2 apples a day for 2 weeks, you could totally turn around the makeup of your bacteria in your gut. So I'll post that article as well. And I found that very interesting because, again, not knowing if you have an issue and it's something that's easy. And if you like apples and you think about eating one in the morning and one at night, and that could enhance the bacteria in your gut. Wow, what an easy, cheap way to do it. So I'll post that. And if you think about it, long time ago, so many of these things are really old tips, right? And sayings that our grandparents used to follow. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. So maybe it's the apple a day and the pectin and the bacteria that it supports in your gut is the reason it keeps the doctor away, because that is such an important piece of our system. And when it goes wrong, lots of things can go wrong. So I found that very interesting. So the last thing I'm going to ask you to do, and I will touch more on this next week as to why, but I want you to start tracking it this week. And if you're not already, H, hydrate. Your body needs water. And H is also hydrate with H2O. So not just liquid. Your body needs H2O, actual water. So when you're tracking, if you're including things like juice or coffee or any type of liquid or soup or broth or whatever you might be eating, it doesn't count. You need water. 2 recommendations here. Number 1, drink lukewarm water. Don't put ice in it. And I say that because when you drink really cold water, it actually tightens up your blood vessels and it doesn't absorb as much of the water. You want to absorb as much of it as you can. So if you drink the lukewarm water or room temperature water, whatever you want to call it, you will actually absorb more of it and stay better hydrated. I've changed that and now I can't drink really cold water. If you need to cool down your body temperature because you're out in the heat or whatever, then definitely drink ice water. But otherwise, try to drink room temperature water to help hydrate. And you need to have at least half of your body weight in ounces of water every day. Okay, so work on that. All of your organs need it to function properly. Your brain, your digestive system, your kidneys, and I haven't gotten very far in lots of them, but so far everything needs water. So please drink your water. So with that, I think I'm done for today. I'm sorry, this was really long. Next week, I'm actually going to talk to you about your liver, and we're going to have a different type of assessment for you to do related to lifestyle and toxins that might be surrounding you that you don't necessarily know are coming into your body. So that'll be something new and different and a little bit less about food. And then more recipes to come after that. So anyway, enjoy your day and thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.